that we're recording this. And then for people coming in, I encourage you to visit the HigherEdSig.com website. Oh, we got people from Taiwan. That's exciting. Because that's where we tell about all the events. As Vice President of Research, we do a research event every fall and spring. If you missed our fall event about doing systematic lit reviews, that's available at the HigherEdSig.com website. But there's all sorts of events going on. I highly encourage you to visit the website. We have people from Australia. Visit the website to sign up for our newsletter, because there's lots of exciting things. And for doctoral students, there's lots of opportunities. So we would encourage you to learn more about it at HigherEdSig.com. What we're going to do, because I know we've got a full agenda, and I've got it so both of our guests can share their screens. What we're going to do is, I'm Jackie Eastman. I'm the Vice President of Research at the AMA HigherEd SIG research event for spring 2023. I would like to thank Dr. Park Taishong for being one of our guest speakers. I would also like to thank Dr. Raj Iyer for being our second guest speaker. I want to do a brief introduction of them and then just brief how we're going to organize the session. Dr. Park Taishong is an associate professor of marketing at the University of Southern Queensland in Australia. He is currently serving as the associate editor of the Australasian Marketing Journal. He has published in journals including, but not limited to, the Journal of Academy of Marketing Science, Industrial Marketing Management, Journal of Business and Industrial Marketing, Journal of Business Research, Journal of Retailing and Consumer Services, International Journal of Consumer Studies, Journal of Personal Selling and Sales Management, Marketing Intelligence and Planning, and the Asia Pacific Journal of Marketing and Logistics. Our other guest speaker is Dr. Raj Iyer, who is the Caterpillar Professor, Department Chair, and Director of International Business at Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois, in the US. He is the Associate Editor for the Journal of Consumer Behavior. He has published in journals including, but not limited to, Journal of Business Research, International Marketing Review, Psychology and Marketing, International Journal of Consumer Studies, Journal of Consumer Marketing, and Journal of Services Marketing, among others. How we're going to structure it is Dr. Taishong's going to speak first. He's going to speak for about 35 to 40 minutes. Then Dr. Iyer will speak for about 35 to 40 minutes. And then we'll have some time at the end for questions. I would encourage you, though, as you have questions, type them into the chat, because while one of our guest speakers is speaking, the other can probably answer your question. We also have several other associate editors in attendance. Dr. Varsha Jain is an associate editor of multiple journals. And so she's, I'm sure she can jump in there and help answer questions. And then what I'll do is I'll be keeping track of the questions, and at the end sort of lead the discussion of what were some of the topics. But I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Dr. Taishong.
Thank you so much, Jackie, for the introduction, and lovely to see everybody. I think this is where I'm going to start sharing my screen. So I think I can already share. That's good. I turn on a chat as well, just in case anyone asks a question. All right. Thank you so much for being here, including myself. So I just retyped the topic last night. So at first it was like how to get a 99% exception rate, but I was like, okay, maybe it's too high. So I reduced it to number 88 because I think it's a lucky number. And my house number is number 8 as well. So the first half an hour, I'm going to go about how do I recommend a strategy to get a 99% exception rate in when we get a revision invitations. And in fact, I think my exception rate is about that for the revision version, because it's had to get rejected before then. So yeah. All right, let's have a look. So I would say, from my personal experience and then what I have worked with my team, I would say number one strategy is the motivation behind why we are doing the paper. Did you notice that especially those of us who are not the early career researcher or who already been working in academic for a while, I would believe that before we get our first job or when we first started our job, we tend to have a very strong motivation in deciding to get a job. And then we work very hard to support our family or to explore some things that you're doing in your research, because you want to publish from your PhD or you want to get a job. So you have the will, you have the motivation to do publications. So one of the strongest reason behind why a person could be a successful, academic or anything in the world is that when they have a very good positive motivation to move forward, to improve themselves. So for some people, they might have family as their motivation, like myself. Some people that might have, want to do the good for the society and many other things. So I would suggest the first thing is to find what is that motivation that pushing you to go to the next step, or what is something that is stopping you from motivating yourself to go ahead with this specific career. So in my opinion, find that one strong motivation, and then it will move you to the next step. That's how I push myself as well. Because let's say in the very beginning of my career, if I can't get papers and all that, then I might not have a job. So, but obviously publication is one of the aspects of many things in for us to get a job, teaching and other things as well. But please find that very strong motivation for yourself. Now let's move on to the butter part of this presentation, my section here. So first of all, well, secondly, I want to say, this is a question to all of us. Is it important for us to know the birthday of the editor of our target journals? When I first started my career, it was quite important for me to build a relationship with an editor. And I thought it was important, okay, at that time, like 10 plus years ago, I thought it's important. So I did some, before I go to a conference like AMA or like ANSMAC and all that, I tend to have one person that I want to go and make a relationship with. I go and find out the birthday of the editor, what food does he or she like, and all that type of thing, and go and make the relationship with. But to be frank with us, it's actually the relationship with the editor is actually will make a difference. What going to make more different is knowing the journal that you're going to target your paper to, knowing their style, their preferred, words count, their preferred style of methodology, or do they need like to study in one within this paper? What type of discussion and implication do they prefer? Like a very strong involved theory and practical, and the way the graph and tables is presented. So all of this is very important. Like in the old day, for example, Journal of Business Research have a list of, I think it was about 31 points of like what they like and what they don't like. The previous editor from the Archwood side of like, you need to put this certain style with the S, without S, and all that type of thing. So knowing the journal, knowing the editor of what they preferred is the most important aspect, apart from knowing there's no need for us to know the birthday of the editor. So that is one to think about. Now let's move on to during the revision. So moving forward here is I will assume that we already get an invitation to submit our paper. Could be major revision, could be revise and resubmit, could be anything in that case. So what a lot of the time I'm going to talk about here is like the expecting the unexpected contribution. So in the first round of submission, we might have already point out what are some of the expected contribution. You already mentioned in your first round, let's say your paper going to contribute to certain theory, certain aspect. But what we want to hear, and this is actually work very well for my case, is that always give the extra contribution that you did not give in the first round of review. For example, you could add more extra study. You could do some, extra bit that the reviewer or the editor did not ask. So basically, you try to add more value into your paper so that they will have higher chance to get, paper. I think you still can hear me. It just kicked my microphone. So yeah. All right. Moving on to example of what I meant by adding value to. Let me check the microphone one more time. Okay, should be good. Now, adding value to the unexpected contribution. So this is one example of this paper we use survey, and I think it's come from European Journal of Marketing, EJM. So this paper, what we did, sorry, I apologize for that. I'm having a cough problem at the moment. Now, what my team did, our team did in this paper was that the reviewer actually did not ask for a comprehensive literature review table. But what we did was, because we received a major revision, and it was a risky major revision. So it was like, okay, we should try to find a way to add more value to the paper. So we throw in, we do everything that the reviewer asked, but at the same time, we also put in the literature review table just to showcase of what have happened in the previous, to show the evolution, to show the empirical insight. So this is one way to add value to the paper by include literature review tables. This is one example of what our team did in future research direction section of a paper. So basically at the end of our paper, we tend to say what is a future research direction, right? One strategy that we use is make the future research direction considered as a call for action. This is actually also good because the paper most likely going to get more citation, because in the future, people will look at our suggested area of research citation. So the benefit of this is journal get more citation, we get more citation. And at the same time, we also show other people what are some of the potential area that the people could cite us. And this strategy can be worked for almost every type of paper that we do, empirical review paper. So this is one way that I would suggest. Another way that I would do, basically, this is a paper from JAMS. This paper originally is just a review paper, meaning just a literature review conceptual paper. Again, this is a super major risky revision. The reviewer did not ask for extra data correction, but what we did was, because it's so risky, and then we say, okay, look, instead of we have just one study, which is like a literature review, we throw in a second study of interview as well. So what we did in this case was we did, we do interview with CEO and people who in a business force, and then we come up with like use a second study to show the potential research framework, tenets, and proposition for the future. But the point here is that add an extra study into our paper to make sure that we have something really strong and unique to go ahead. And if I'm not wrong, Journal of Consumer Behavior also supporting, the idea of like you do like a multi-study into your paper, because we make your paper have a lot more value. This is another strategy that my team did. In fact, this is my first paper that I ever published in my career. So this is more than 10 years ago. There's this figure here on the right-hand side, which is this one here, which is circle one. That is a main framework study. And what happened during the review is that the paper, again, is like major revision. The paper was not that, it's not like a break-even type of study. It's not like a breakthrough study. It's just a general regular type of study. But what we did was, because we cannot add more add more factors since the review and all that already started. I mean, we can, but we did not. But what we did was we throw in a model study. So we test a few models in there. We test a segmentation analysis. We test a different group of people who are heavy internet user, light user, and medium user. So we try to play around with the data analysis to see what value we can add in after we submit the paper to the journals. So you can either go and correct more data, which is like the previous example, or do extra analysis of the data that we already have. This is one of the easier way and faster way and cheaper way. So those are some of the examples. This example here, it's just a continue of the previous page of showing the segmentation analysis. So this over here, the lower part here, just showing a graph of different group of segment, showing the different result of the whole study. So this is something interesting to throw in if it is possible. So that was the section of throwing the extra value into the paper after we submit the paper. Next thing I want to talk about is the providing good experience for our reviewer and the reader, which the most important people are the reader who are going to be reading your paper once your paper get accepted. But before that, we need to make the reviewer and editor happy with our paper. So what we should do is I'm going to quickly talk about the colors used. So I just want to talk quickly about cold and hot color use. Some of us who already know about this strategy, so please feel free to support me as well. Now, a lot of the time, some journal will be asking us to make a note, which is a part that we, is new into the revision. Some journal will ask us not to make any mark. So it depends on which type of journal you are submitting it to. So it depends on the journal. Now, let's say if the journal asks you to make a note on which words or section are new. So I would like to suggest you to use a cold color, not hot color, because cold color is more associated more to positive feeling. Cold color in this case is a blue color. Hot color is a yellow color. Now, yellow is not that bad on this example. The reader will feel okay. You can do either highlight or change the color of the text, depend. Here is another example of extreme version. Red color in this case is associated to something really negative and hot versus the green. And I think red is harder to read as well. So if I were to suggest, please pick like blue or green color when we do a revision like this. So it's give a more positive feeling towards the reviewer who will be reading it. Now, this is an example of a heat map that I bring out from one of my study. The difference between these two heat map is that the one on the left is called effective writing style, where we use emotion, where we use mood as a way to writing the discussion of your finding. So this is like a section from the discussion of your finding, the mood, the way you write a paper with the emotion, the mood, storytelling. Another one on the other side is from the cognitive writing style. Basically, you use percentage, you use the actual fact that you learn from your finding in this section here. Based on our finding, it's showing that people, when we use cognitive writing style, the reader will pay really good attention where there are the fact and information, but they do not pay attention throughout your paragraph. Versus the one that you use emotion to write. The people tend to pay more attention throughout the whole paragraph, but obviously after a few paragraphs, both type of style, the people start to lose their attention. What we learned from this case is that we should use emotion writing, basically use storytelling style in our writing where it is possible, and also combine with the fact and number when it is relevant, but not overcrowded our discussion section with number and fact, because some people might just lose attention there. So we have to use mix and match version style. This is example and suggestion from my end. Moving on to the language and strategy in crafting the document. Let's have a look. This is an example of how my revision note is look like, where there is a question mark, yellow color, that is point of interest to talk about. So first of all, we have to make the document look nice and look official to a good level, and say thank you to the editor and the journal if it's relevant there. If you're not sure who is a handle editor, then don't mention the name. But if you know exactly who are the editor that involved in your review process, please feel free to mention the editor name. Normally, their name will be in the decision letter that is sent to you. And make sure that we repeat every single word that they say in their document. Don't change a single word because some people could become upset. In this document, I start with what associate editor said first, and then I put what they say in italic. And then I put in a very clear response on how I respond to each of the comment from the people, including editor. So this is an example of a response number one. I say here my response, and then the last part here, I copy and paste exactly what it say, what I have changed in the journal. Now, an example of this International Journal of Advertising, this is one example of a journal that will not allow the author to make a note or mark in the main document of what you have changed. Therefore, the reviewer tend to have to read the whole thing. So since the reviewer, we have to read the whole document again. And surprisingly, it's surprised that I found out from my friends for a few years ago that many of them will not read the whole document, the main document again. What they're going to do is they're just going to read a revision note. Some people are like that, and that's fair for them. So in this case, if we know that some people are just going to read this revision note, we need to make sure that this revision note is going to answer everything that they have in their head. Therefore, we have to copy and paste the whatever we change in this as well. Yes, I can share your presentation slide later on. What I want to say also is that we need to be really polite in the words that we use. Thank you and all that, but don't use exactly the same words. I also want to mention that we can argue with the reviewer in case of there is some misunderstanding, or if there are more than, obviously there will be 2 or 3 reviewers. If some reviewer suggests contradicting comments, so you might have to make it very clear on which direction you want to go and why you not go the other direction. So give a justification for every single comment that you receive, whether you're going to follow or not follow. I would assume that you will follow most of the comment, but unless it doesn't make sense. Here is actually one example of a paper that this is a very funny, because when I received when Jackie contacted me to do this session, the next day I actually got into a trouble with one of the reviewer. Basically, one reviewer say accept, one reviewer say reject. The one say reject is because I totally did not answer any comment from that reviewer. The problem was when I received the invitation to revision on this paper, I received an email from the journal, official journal, and then it's always come with a list of comment, right? But this time, this reviewer actually put some of his comment in the email, in the document that the journal sent, but 2/3 of his comment is actually as an attached PDF version. But what happened was I did not receive the PDF version, so I didn't know that there is such thing as a PDF comment for this person. And the person actually got very pissed that I did not do any comment that listed on his PDF, because obviously I did not receive it. Now, what happened also at the time was I suspect that there might be some missing comment. I sent an email to the journal and I asked if there is any missing comment or PDF file. The journal did not answer me because it was before the Christmas time. And it also happened that on this paper, before Christmas, I actually went on leave and I changed the university. I went on a conference as well. So by the time I look at this paper, it's almost the last minute that I have to submit the revision. So I sent another email and asking if I can get extension or if there is comment, but it's already very late because I should submit the comment, the revision in the next day. So therefore, I just submit the paper. And then when the second round of revision come back, this is the outcome. Reviewer 1 say accept, everything is all good, well done. Reviewer 2, extremely upset. If you read his email, I mean, that is very upset. So what I take away from here is that I should always wait until the journal come back. It's not the fault of the journal because it's during the Christmas time and all that. So I should just wait, because at the end of the day, let's say if I pass the deadline, I know it myself that the journal can easily extend the deadline. So there's no need for me to rush at that time. But at that time, I just felt like I just want to finish it. So the key takeaway in here is do not rush. Right now, this paper is under review. The second is under review, the third round at the moment. So hopefully it will be accepted eventually. So the key takeaway is always wait for the journal to get back to you, and there is no need to rush. Let's have a chat quickly about what could make the reviewer upset. First one is acknowledgement. Just now I give example of how a reviewer got so pissed off because I did not follow some of the comment. That is what is meant by acknowledge. We have to acknowledge every single comment that we receive from them. Thank you so much, so the language that we use have to be good. In some journal, so they will pick the reviewer that who are very good in those areas, and if we happen to cite them, sometimes they feel better, but obviously we don't know who are they, so sometimes we can't just cite them. Therefore, in terms of our citation, we should always cite the known author in that area. Now, what could make the editor upset? What can make them more happy? So one of the biggest one I think that will piss off the editor is adding and removing the author name when the paper is almost accepted. Could be in a minor revision or when the paper is already accepted. The reason is because it's very difficult. The publisher will not allow that to happen because there used to be a lot of complaint, removing people, adding people. So you have to sign extra document. You have to wait for people to approve it. It's delayed the publishing process. The editor doesn't like it. I think some of us, later I can say this. And what other things that can make them happy is their reputation, contribution, the citation. The more citation they would possible get in the future, the more they will like it. So this is where, extra value that I mentioned come into place, the future research direction, those things that you create citation for the papers for yourself and the journals. Some other journal, they also have specific KPI, such as those timeline, like there are some journal that especially say, I won't say it. There are some publisher that it say, oh, it must be accepted, or it must be first decision within, say, 5 weeks. So the editor already have the pressure that have to make things fast, have to, review people, invite people to review fast and make the decision fast. And keep in mind that editor actually, this is a volunteer time for the editor. And often they work on this after hours or their weekend. So they already spend so much personal time on it. And then they have the pressure on all of these aspects, In some journal, we also have to understand, like, for example, European Journal of Marketing, there is an editor-in-chief, which will assign who will be the regional editor. The regional editor will then be the person who send the paper for reviewer to review. So for European Journal of Marketing, we have to understand that, okay, there are 3 regional editors. And these are the 3 people that make the decision, accept or not accept. And the one who select who will be your reviewer. And for European Journal of Marketing, this is just one pure example. If you, the role of the associate editor in this journal tend to be enhanced, whether it should be accept or reject the paper by giving more personal comment. So my point in here is that we should understand your journal very well on which are the tasks that each of the editor do in that journal that you're going to submit a paper to. A trick is, the journal always like for us to acknowledge their work. Continue the conversation is a key. Continue the conversation means cite some work that they have been doing. Refer some work to some of the key editor that will be take part in your paper. Now we'll be mindful of the time, and then we just move on. And then we come back and ask here, can we disagree with the editor? Yes, you can. But it's not good for the long term. I would not try to use the word disagree, but say a positive conversation. Like, for example, okay, for example, you want to disagree, right? But the way you talk is have to be like, okay, you would like to explore and learn something so you can improve yourself in the future. So don't make it sound like you disagree. Make it sound like you are trying to understand what is a problem, how to improve it, for the further, that type of thing. All right. There was one case in the past that I did disagree with the editor, and I actually felt quite regret on that event. So what happened was that one of my paper got rejected in the second round of review, which is, that's fine, not a problem, happened sometime. Just reduce my 88% of the acceptance rate, but that's fine. Anyway, when I read the comment, I felt like, okay, the paper can be improved, but there was some problem. One reviewer say accept, one reviewer say reject. So, but my friends suggested me that I should talk to the editor. And normally it's very rare that I will talk to the editor, but I actually publish in this journal so many times. So I I just felt like, okay, maybe I talk to the editor. So I sent an email, tell the editor that, hey, look, this comment I think I can fix. Can you please give me a chance? Because, and I asked like, why the paper got rejected. Basically, the journal editor say, oh, because it's going to take too long in the review process. It's going to be like 3 or 4 rounds of review, and it will not meet the KPI that I mentioned earlier on that some editors scared. So if this paper is in review too long, it will be, it will reduce the KPI and all that. So eventually, the editor reversed the decision from reject to major revision, and he or she allowed me to go, with the fix the comment. And eventually, funny enough, this paper accepted eventually, but I felt like that specific event made the reviewer, made the editor a little bit upset with me, but now it's all good. But I feel like because I'm not in need of a paper or anything like that. So if we can just move on something like that, maybe it's a good idea not to disagree. Can we ask an extension? I think this is something Jackie can support me because she looked after the special issue editor when it's come to journal consumer behavior. So can we ask for an extension? Answer yes, especially when we talk about regular issue. If you're a reviewer, ask for extension, yes. If you're author, can you ask for extension? Yes, not ideal, but yes, you can. If you're doing a special issue, if you're submitting a paper to a special issue, do your best not to apply for extension because special issue have specific timeline. And some journal that I know, not journal consumer behavior, okay? Some journal that I know is that they would reject paper because of they think they can't finish the revision during the period of the special issue. And I came across that firsthand as well. I've been instructed to reject a paper if it's not going to be accepted during a specific period of time as a case editor. So try your best not to ask for extension for a special issue. In the event that you get an extension from a special issue, never ever ask for a second extension or that specific paper on the special issue because it's just going to blow up the time period and is the paper going to be rejected. So if you can, don't ask, but if you need it to make the paper become better, for example, add more data set, data collection, then so be it. Then you can ask for extension. Last group of people who can be upset is the publisher. Now, normally we don't talk about this, but I just like to briefly mention publisher will be very pissed when you add and remove authors because it could lead to some problem. And what also that they think about is the cost. Cost in this case is mean the paper, as in like the paper. If you say if the target journal that you submit a paper to say 8,000 words, but you throw in 15,000 words, that is like almost double, and it will cost them to print those paper out later on because in every issue, every issue that they publish, like the issue of the paper, they have a specific words that they can do. Like, for example, 100,000 words can be in issue 1, 100,000 words can be in issue 2. So the more words that you put in your own paper, the less, articles they can publish in that. So it's lead to cost. So therefore, you have to follow the guideline of the journal policy very strictly for some journal because it's relevant to cost and then reputation and some other things. There are chances that people can be blacklisted as well. So this is something that, if you do something too dodgy, then you can be blacklisted as a reviewer or as an author, but that is not relevant to review. Special issue. What need to, almost done, by the way, special issue, what we need to be mindful of if we are author, which is like the time of the special issue, when is a window of accepting. A lot of the time you will see it in the call for paper. Otherwise, you can just ask a special issue editor. Some journal does not have the time limit. Some journal will have a time limit. This is depend on a special issue. And some journal also have a minimum exception rate or exception paper to be published in the special issue. Some journal also have a maximum, all right? Most of the journal would have a minimum to be published in a special issue, but that can be waived from time to time. They just do it in a part of a regular issue or something like that. Now, the reason why it is important to know the maximum, if there is a maximum paper that they can publish in a special issue, is because there will be some journal that force to accept papers, say just 10, all right? in the special issue. But there will be some very smart and ethical journal, such as Journal of Consumer Behavior, will say, oh, if you have too many paper, that's fine. Just do 2 issue. You regular issue or something. So there will be some good journal like this that not reject paper based on the number of the maximum or the minimum. So this is something to learn and look at as well. Also, we should know who are the key author in those areas, because a special issue, we look at the special area, right? We should cite those key author, not because of they're going to be your reviewer, but it's because of we should acknowledge what are some of the work that have been done, how you're going to communicate and build on the conversation, which is a key again, with the journal and the known author. And often this known author could become your reviewer, and it will be good if you cite them in that case. Make sure that we link, obviously we're going to submit something to special issue, link your paper to that special issue, make sure that is really relevant. But one thing that I noticed as a case editor for special issue is that do not copy a specific name into the special issue. I give you one example. I'm a case editor for the psychology and marketing, right? For the technology 4.0. And there were so many people submitted paper with the word 4.0 in their title. It looked fine when you just look at one paper, but it looks silly when there are suddenly 30 papers say 4.0 of something. So it just looked very funny when we put some specific keyword like that in the title. So therefore, we might have to be a little bit more creative with the title, not to put something that too many other people gonna put that same words there. All right, moving to the last page here that I have. This is a Thai language. I originally from Thailand. So this is something that my dad always tell me when I was younger. So the meaning of this word is saying, if you can hold your anger for 1 minute, sometimes you can escape from your sadness for the next 100 days. This is an example of you use when you get upset or pissed with the editor or reviewer. So if you happen to be upset with the editor and you want to send an email scold the editor, think about it for a bit, because if you send that email, you might feel regret for the next 100 days or even more, because this might not be your last work. And also the society is very small. You make one person piss off because of your whatever reason, the word could spread and all that. So try to be nice to everybody and be cool in that case. All right. So this code discussion section, I will just wait until we finish everything. And then if you have a question, please feel free to have a chat with me. And I hope that what I mentioned here will be useful to any of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was fantastic. Now I'm going to turn it over to
Yes.
Dr. Iyer to share his screen and for his half of the presentation.
Okay. Hi everyone. Can you can you see my screen?
Yes.
Firstly, thanks, Park. And I'm gonna kind of repeat a lot of the things that Park mentioned in the in his presentation. So if it sounds a little redundant, apologies in advance. I wanted to have a decent segue going into the methodology aspect. So some of the stuff that I say may sound redundant. And the methodology comments are more higher level comments, not going too deep into the things that you want to avoid as a part of the review process. So I'll start with Park's comments, which is kind of interesting, and the comment that was made in the Thai language. So one of the things that my doctoral committee told me when you get a revision, don't ever read a revision on a weekend. So if it comes on a Thursday or a Friday, just don't even open it, because that's going to ruin your weekend. So that was a starting point, and many of my committee folks would never read anything over the weekend. Weekend was, meant more for mowing the lawn and, doing the household chores and things of that nature. So again, handling reviewer comments, again, we've all gone through that phase where we get one of the set outcomes. Either it's a desk reject, which is probably, in my opinion, the best thing because it puts you out of your misery right away. And then the other one is, of course, rejection after the review process, which could take about 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the journal. The major risky revision, that risky is such a potent word, right? Because you don't know what is really risky. Is that a standard letter that comes out with the word risky, or do they really mean it's risky? And then the ones that you like to see are the minor revision or the conditional accept letters. Sadly, they are few and far between, right? So, all right. So let's talk about how we go about this. And again, some of the things that Park said again. Feedback is definitely invaluable, whether you agree with the reviewer or not. Feedback is invaluable. It's just that it's their point of view. So please don't shrug off any of the comments. Pay attention to all the comments. No comments are too small or long. Very important to address the AE comments. So being an AE, and one of the things that Park brought up, which I thought was neat, was you have one person agreeing to the changes you made and feels that the manuscript has progressed in the right direction, and the other reviewer just absolutely dings it. At that time, it's important that you have a conversation with the AE. Now, as an AE, and I know some of you are AEs here, so you have a better sense of how to handle this. Typically, most AEs will kind of give you a little hint in terms of follow reviewer 1 or reviewer 2 or whatever. Because if there is a conflict of opinion and you don't want to be on the receiving end of it, typically the AE kind of gives their point of view. So it's very important not only to address the reviewer, but also the AE. The other thing that Park mentioned is indicate where changes are made on the manuscript. So again, highlight it, use a different font color depending on the journal. And I like the heat map a lot, and I think I'm going to follow that. I've never done it, so that's thank you for that. And I think the next point is do not make the reviewers search for the changes. So if you've made a change, indicate what page number in the manuscript it is. A lot of times what happens is if you're working on multiple projects, there's a tendency that, oh, I made the change, but you don't actually make the change in this. You respond in the comment to the reviewer, but actually forget to do the change in the manuscript. So it helps to immediately say where the change in the manuscript happens. And I like the last comment. Thank the reviewer for every comment. And change the tone. I mean, say, thank you, excellent point. I agree with your point of view. Change this. Don't keep saying thank you for everything. Just change the words almost to the extent you're patronizing what the reviewer is saying. Okay, never hurts, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to find a home and you want to see that this. So I kind of broke it down, and again, I think Park did a great job of this. So I'm going to quickly go through the introduction comments. So when you write the introduction, definitely you want to focus on the focal construct. The challenge is a lot of times we tend to ignore how we position the manuscript. The most common comments that we get back from reviewers is that the introduction to the purpose was weak. That's a standard comment, and it's kind of easy to say where this is. So it's as an author, it becomes important for us to find out where is that gap in the literature. The comments that the reviewer does not want to hear is there's nothing done here. And so you want to say why this is important, what is significant about the study, and avoid saying where the study was done or give a region. So for example, if this was done in South Korea, done in Vietnam, India, wherever, avoid this, just kind of position it. And then when you get into the methodology section, then you can say where the region of the study was. The region should be the last thing that is in the introduction part of the paper. With literature review, again, tie it to a theory, look for theories related to the construct in your study. So obviously, all of us kind of do this. We use previous research, previous literature to see how you can relate the relationships. Not necessarily to reinvent the wheel. The most common mistake a lot of us look at, especially fresh PhDs, is we're looking for an overarching theory because that's how we've been taught. But there's no one theory. When you're extending somebody's research, you're bringing some new things into the study, and that may not fit into the existing theory that was used in the study, right? So you could use multiple theories to explain the relationship in your conceptual model, all right? And that's the approach that one needs to take. Just my suggestion, okay? Having a theory explain the relationship makes the justification of your hypothesis that much stronger and easier to explain. So important thing to keep in mind, not all hypotheses may be explained by one theory, and that is okay. Right? Justify your hypothesis. Always don't let hang your hypothesis. Just one of the common things you see is there's a whole literature review section done, and then there's like 8 hypotheses that come out of it. And you begin to wonder which one really ties into the part of the literature review. So it's important that you start with the literature, how that leads to why you're hypothesizing that, and then move on to the next part of the. So segues are important. Good tie-ins are important. If you think your hypothesis is intuitive, then explain it in your own words. Okay. However, if you have past research that has kind of looked at it, it makes the justification that much more easier. All right. Okay. So now let me focus on methodology. Okay. Now, typically the methodology comments can be the easiest to address, depending on how you carried out a study and if you carried it out the right way. So before it goes through the review process, here are some of the things that will help you to avoid the typical comments that you get back from the reviewer. Data collection. Please be exhaustive in the process of data collection. So if you use the snowball sample, if you use this, see if someone else has done the same thing, cite them. And that makes it easier because it becomes less, the onus is less on your part to justify this whole thing. Say, hey, this was done here. And then so, and again, as Park mentioned, find out if there were studies that use the same methodology or this in that journal, and then cite it, because that means it's an acceptable practice. Okay, so if you use a consumer panel, non-probabilistic sample, a lot of us do that, right? Majority of us are doing a non-probabilistic convenience snowball, coda sample, something of that nature, okay? If you used help in data collection, it becomes important again to say where you got the sample from. So if you're using a consumer panel like Qualtrics or Prolific or one of those sites, say that. If it's an MTurk sample, please say it. And then justify why the MTurk sample is fine here. Because I think there's a lot of questions that's coming out, that some journals look at the MTurk data and go, it's not going to be in. They have their issues. So you want to watch out for those things. because those are the easy comments that the reviewer can pose in the study. All right, cool. Sampling. So describe your sample. So as an AE, this is where I have the most issues. I get these really well-written papers, but they will not describe the sample. They won't say where they got the sample from. They won't provide any demographic information, no categorical information. It's important to say where you got the sample, who is your sample, basic demographics, and then any categorical information, so that frequency, usage, simple things like that. Because again, the typical reviewer comment at that time is going to be, oh, did you use this as a covariate in your study? Because it's very easy to say, because that's a subtle way of saying you didn't include anything in the sample or this. All right. I'll give you an example. Luxury studies. All right, we got a student sample for luxury. Seriously, how many students can really afford luxury? How many adults can afford luxury? And if I am a luxury shopper, why the heck am I filling out a questionnaire for $5? Right? So it's one of those things. So you got to be careful about those things, right? Operationalization of the construct. And now, so this is interesting. So specify the construct and say all the items that you use. Okay. If there were any modifications, say why the modification is made. Nothing wrong with that. So my methodology discussion is focused mainly on a few multivariate techniques, anything that involves an OLS, CB-SEM, or PLS-SEM. So if anyone has specific questions or needs help with any of the other techniques, canonical correlation, discriminant analysis, whatever the case, shoot me an email. I'll be more than happy to help you with that. But for the sake of this discussion, I've kind of limited to only this. Okay. So depending on the method that you use for the analysis, then you need to explain the rationale behind using that. So if you're using a CB-SEM or a PLS-SEM, you definitely want to indicate the measurement model in there. All right. So some basic fit statistics or fit indices need to be in there. RMSEA, chi-square degrees of freedom, your goodness of fit, badness of fit, all that good stuff needs to be in there. You definitely want to talk a little bit about your construct validity. And, so I think now it's pretty much a given that you need to, by default, have the Fornell and Larker in there, right? So everybody talks about Fornell and Larker into this. You definitely want to put in a correlation table. And the reason is, if you have a correlation table, anybody can see how the model is actually worked out. So you want to put the correlation table, include the average variance extracted, along with means and standard deviation. Now, another thing that you typically see in the correlation table, a lot of authors kind of do is construct reliability. This is different from coefficient alpha. So you'll see construct reliability, which pretty much says, in this study, how did the construct work, and how reliable is a construct. The last point in this slide that I want to focus on is the use of PLS-SEM. More and more journals are moving away from this. I know it's way easier to use PLS-SEM than CB-SEM. So you need to justify why PLS-SEM. The most common rationale or reason that is being used is, oh, it's a very small sample size, so I'm using PLS-SEM. But we all know the challenges of PLS-SEM. So you want to be careful with that as to why it is. I can tell you at least 3 or 4 journals, if they see a PLS-SEM, they're going to ding you right away. It's going to be a desk reject. And there's more and more kind of moving in that direction. So you want to be careful about that. Common method bias. Oh boy, this is the fun thing, right? This used to be similar to the non-response bias that used to come out in the 80s and the early 90s. And as a default, everyone would say, oh, we tested for non-response bias using the method by so-and-so, and Potsakoff used to be the popular one. And then interesting common method bias nowadays, Potsakoff again, right, with the common method bias. The Harman method, regardless of where people are in terms of this, is dated and not used very. I mean, even if you put in the Harman method, the one-factor Harman, there are folks who would say, hey, can you test it using the common latent factor? Here's my point to it. If there is a common method bias, nothing wrong with that. You're just addressing the common method bias. You're going to put a common latent factor and then run your whole analysis based on that. So in other words, please don't hide it. Especially if you have a correlation table, highly correlated. I see the sequence of the questions that you asked. You want to be as honest as possible in this. Okay. Keep in mind the reviewer has some mileage in terms of their experience in looking at these things, and so you want to be careful about it. If you're using the process software, please indicate the use Y process instead of CBSEM. Now, the common thing that you will find is you do the measurement model using CBSEM, you have all this, and then you say, come up with composite scores. Why? Is it easier to run a mediation on process or a moderation on process or whatever the case is? So again, provide that justification. You're beginning to get more and more questions about that. Mediation, moderation. If you're using mediation in the model, please explain why that is the case. Why that construct or that variable is a mediating variable. Past research always helps you get through or overcome that part. General rule about mediation, typically your mediating variable is an independent variable. If it has a direct effect on the dependent, it's a justification as to this. If you're using serial mediation, then that's now becoming more and more common in publications. General rule of thumb, if you have two mediating variables, serial mediation, they need to be correlated significantly. All right. Please use a different approach than Barron and Kenny. Barron and Kenny is obsolete. That's an easy easy comment for the reviewer to ding you. So you want to move away from Barron and Kenny. So if you're doing a moderation test or a mediation test, move away from Barron and Kenny. If you're using the Amos version of CBSEM, there's some inbuilt this in Amos that just makes it easier for you to do moderation as well as mediation. Multi-group method is one, and then you could do the chi-square difference test. So there's like a variety of different ways of doing it. Or you could do a simple interaction test if you're doing a OLS, or the Chow test. I don't know how many of you remember the Chow test, right? It came out in the 1960s, but it's still, it's an econometric method, and it's still much more robust than the other methods. So preferably use the same software. I just mentioned this. If you're using CBSEM on Amos or some other platform, continue to do the same thing. So when you're running a measurement model, run the structural model on the same thing. Run the mediation, run the moderation, everything on the same this. Please do not switch to a process or something else just because it's easier. All right. So some overall do's and don'ts. Take every reviewer comment in positive vein. Typically, when the editor or the AE assigns a reviewer, they think that the person is a subject matter expert, and so they allocate the paper to a subject matter expert. You may not agree with the reviewer, and that is fine. We've all been there. I think the most common comments that we hear is like, was it my paper they reviewed? I mean, I never said that in my paper, right? I mean, that's the most common thing. I never said that. Are they even talking about, yeah, we've all been there. But again, keep in mind, they're the subject matter expert. If the reviewer raises a comment or a point that is different from what you have presented, don't shrug off that comment. Explain your position, because here's your opportunity to say where your contribution is. Okay, so, and if you fail to make that, the reviewer just thinks that, hey, so they didn't have an answer for my point. So address, and that's what Park also mentioned in his part, is like, write the whole thing, whatever the reviewer says, and then address each aspect of the reviewer comment verbatim, right? As AEs, as reviewers, I think we look at a manuscript, especially when going through review, and we want to see if we can help the manuscript see the light of day. I don't think anybody sits there with the idea that I'm going to ding it. Everybody is looking at it as, okay, let's see what we can do to make it fit the journal, keep the standard of the journal, and so help in the process. So when I get a review, and I'm sure all of you kind of feel the same take the same approach. I look at it as, okay, can I do it? And if I can do it in 2 to 3 months' time, then I definitely want to give an opportunity to the author to take that same approach. And if an extension is required, that's perfectly fine. So the reviewer typically helps on working the manuscript see the light of day. So take the comments by the reviewer really seriously. Avoid copy paste of tables. Now, this is a common this that bugs the reviewer, is when you copy paste tables from SPSS or AMOS or PLS-SEM. Now, PLS-SEM really puts out some really nice conceptual models and in color and all that good stuff. So yeah, draw the model out. Okay, that's important. That's the least you can do, all right? This shows that you made the effort on the part for the study, okay? Please make sure that you list all the scale items. And now this is a point I'm repeating again. Don't use acronyms. Don't say, oh, BW1. Nobody knows what is BW1. So you want to say the actual scale item, all right? And then next to it, if you want to say BW1, that's fine, but preferably use multiple samples in your study, either a mixed method, different data from different countries, multiple studies to validate your results. More and more A journals are kind of moving in this direction. Unless there's a study that can be done only with one sample. Majority of them, most empirical studies are kind of going in this direction. So definitely make it a point to do that. If there is a problem or an issue with your sample, please report it rather than hide it or mask it. It can be easily picked up. Okay, I'll give you an example. So if you're running a SEM and if you correlate the error terms, anyone looking at it will be looking at the degrees of freedom and say, oh, you did that. And if you hide it, then they begin to wonder how much more have you hidden in the manuscript. So you want to be careful about that. If your results are not significant, happens. Hey, not everything is this. So don't fudge your findings. Reporting metric invariance, I think this is where it helps to see a paper or two papers on what all is reported. Most mistakes are reported when they report metric invariance, they report the wrong statistics. So you want to be careful about that. Keep in mind, not all hypotheses need to be significant or supported. All right. If none of your results are significant, then you want to consider, hey,